Welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast where we inspire growth, beat down biases, and get into all sorts of good trouble with your host, Britt East. No topic is off limits as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy. So get ready to join us for some courageous conversation, because Not Going Quietly starts right now. Hey everyone, welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast for outraged optimists and heartbroken healers all over the world, where we surface life's searing truths in the name of radical togetherness. I'm your host, Britt East, and I have a wonderful guest host for you, or a featured guest for you today. You could call him a host. He'll probably talk as much as a host. In fact, he's so great. This is the second time he's been on the show. He's the first repeat guest we've ever had. So I'm so excited to reintroduce you to him. But let me give you a little background in case you missed the first episode, or if you're not familiar with Amir. Amir Yass is an LGBTQ activist battling against racism, transphobia, and body shaming in the queer community. Creating safe spaces is very important to Amir, and he does that on his Instagram and TikTok. Amir Yass is a queer Muslim unicorn who won't shy away from any conversation. Comedy is at the center of everything he does. Chatting with Amir is like chatting with an old friend with a lot more sass. From TikTok to Instagram, Amir is always trying to educate folks through comedy. Amir, how the hell are you today?
I'm actually really good. I mean, I feel like I was in a lower mood, but I'm in a definite upswing, so it's good.
That's wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear. The last time you were on the podcast was just over a year ago in an episode called Queer Comedy as Social Justice. And on that episode, we talked about all sorts of things like white saviorism, religious bias and bigotry, building queer confidence. And the good news is we solved all of that. And so single-handedly, so much has changed in the world since... Oops, no, it hasn't. We didn't solve anything. We just had a great conversation. We're all stuck in Groundhog's Day, living the same day over and over again. Queer racism is still here. Islamophobia, all that's still here. But please go check out that episode if you haven't already, because as I'm alluding to, that conversation is still really relevant today. We're still dealing with all of those issues. So it's, I really encourage you to check that out if you have the chance. But I mean, I'm curious, like what in your life and your career has changed in the past year? Get us caught up.
So, it's interesting because like in some ways, without the racism and the Islamophobia in the world and the kind of homophobia, I wouldn't really have a platform, right? And so it's like this double-edged sword where I'm like, I wish the world didn't have any of those things, but I feel like it also gave me a voice and it gave me an opportunity to kind of like step forward. And I think it's kind of like the way if there was, no hate in the world, then kindness wouldn't really have any impact. It's kind of the same in a way, because I think for me to step out in front of all that homophobia, Islamophobia, and still be true to who I am, I think that says volumes, not because I'm somehow like superhuman, that really queer people are just like superhuman. I feel like God along the way was like, okay, I'm going to make your life quite harder, but I'm also going to make you more resilient. I'm going to make you more fabulous. I mean, there's nothing like a gay man walking down the street. I mean, straight people can't even touch that. So I think it's beautiful. I don't know. I feel like it's good. It's good. And sometimes I'm like I'll be in a meeting or I'll be like with executives and I'm like, why am I not like nervous, or why am I not getting imposter syndrome? And I think a lot of that comes from queer joy, from like having to kind of, especially when you're first coming out, to really love yourself more than anyone else in your life does, because a lot of people are gonna see it as a disappointment. So I think that has been a big shift for me, especially in the last year.
That's so beautiful. I completely agree. So I go into some spaces that are annoying, we'll call it, and people are really happy to ask me like, well, or tell me like there wouldn't even be a queer culture if there were, if it weren't for straight culture and all this stuff. I'm just like, yeah. And yeah, sure. Maybe some of our culture is a response to homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, whatever, but we're doing just fine without the hate and the bigotry. So,
We don't need
But
it.
the
We would rather not
yeah,
have it,
yeah, yeah.
right? We would rather not,
But
like,
enduring that gives us access to this resiliency and superpower, like you're alluding to, that is almost like a tonic for society. And you might even say is exactly the tonic society needs right now. The exact flavors of joy that we bring happen to be exactly what this toxic masculine society, white supremacist, misogynist, bullcrap society needs right now. They could use a little more of this queer, colorful joy that you're alluding to. So I love that.
I mean, right? Like that's what I'm saying. And it's funny to me because even in the most masculine spaces, right? You have the NFL draft, the most masculine, you would say, if you asked, and like you asked 10 straight dudes right now, what's the most masculine thing? They would say the NFL draft, right? So you have the NFL draft, and the interview is asking the mother of the number one pick, which means like that person's probably going to be like the wet dream for every straight guy, right? Like that's an opportunity for them to really fully be like, oh my God, I would sleep with Tom Brady. I've heard many straight people say that because they become so obsessed with this like masculine figurehead. They're asking the mother, not how did you get here? What happened? They're asking her, did you paint his nails? That's what you're focused on. Like, this is the most masculine man. He's like not gay, he's straight, but he's painting his nails. That's what you're focused on. Like, this is like ESPN asking that. And the mother was like, I didn't paint his nails, he did. Like, she was so uninterested because it's so not interesting.
It's like the performance of masculinity is table stakes in certain segments of our society. If you're not performing it quite right, ooh, well then you must be questionable. If you're not, it's like there's a checklist they go through in order to paint people into certain box and put constraints around our lives. And you have to stop and ask yourself, why are they doing it? I wonder if it's capitalism. I wonder if it's to accumulate wealth and power, to sell us things, to make us feel inferior, lonely, and afraid. And so then when we, as you alluded to at the beginning, reclaim that sense of empowerment, it's probably really scary for them. It's probably really threatening. And so when you say they can't touch us walking down the street, you're probably literally right. They can't touch us.
I love it. I mean, listen, these like tropes, and a lot of it is money based, like war. People always see it as like, oh, it's a land thing. No, it's a money thing at the end of the day. It's natural resources, it's money, it's land, whatever it is. Like, and I think it's the same when it comes to capitalism and queer culture. Like, in a month it's going to be Pride, and all of these companies want a piece of that pie, but they don't want to really uplift queer people. They just want a piece of the money. So I think it's just, again, I'm not saying don't go and enjoy Pride and dance and have fun. I'm just saying I think self-awareness goes a long way. And also even understand, when going back to like toxic masculinity, a lot of people don't understand a lot of that is tied to toxic femininity. It's women saying, I want a strong man. I want someone who's kind of like a Neanderthal to put me over their shoulder, and I, gather and they hunt, but then they don't like what actually comes forward, because a lot of times with a toxically masculine Neanderthal, guess what? He cheats, he might be emotionally abusive. So it's not really what you want. It's just you're programmed to kind of want, I want my man to fight for me. Well, when you really have a man who fights, he's going to jail. Like, you're having issues in your life. It's actually not stability. So I think a lot of the toxic masculine trope, a lot of it comes from femininity, like toxic femininity, where women want that in a man, and then that comes up because a lot of men like want to be vulnerable. They want to share their feelings, but their girlfriends or their wives or whatever will say, I don't want to hear that. I want a real man, right? Like, if you look at the comments with anyone with nails or TikTok videos or painting their nails or even dressing ever so slightly like feminine, all of the nasty comments are generally from women. What happened to real men? What's going on with the world? I'm looking for a real man. So I think it's important to also like hold them accountable for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, who are the folks doing the gender reveal parties? Who are the folks organizing that? Who are the folks saying,
Right.
look at my little child and his little girlfriend, or their little boy, all these kind of classic tropes. But you got me so triggered about Pride, because we're recording this in May of 2024. Pride is just around the corner, as you mentioned. And I have a day job in corporate America, so I just get my hackles raised so fast about rainbow washing and pumping money into the queer community for a day to kind of buy our allegiance. And of course, there's a certain part of my queerling self that delights in seeing recognition, and pride flags in the mall and corporate recognition. But, that doesn't help trans people get healthcare. That doesn't help queer people of color get basic civil rights. So it's like, we've got to get real clear on who are the corporations running protection rackets to prevent PR incidents and lawsuits by putting a rainbow flag on something and continuing with the normal daily business, and who's actually investing in the community when nobody's looking, building relationships, real relationships with real queer people.
Are you uplifting the queer creators? Are you uplifting the influencers you work with, right? Like Lululemon, they had this tiny, I mean, it was honestly microscopic rainbow flag on their door. I'm like, what is the point of that? Like, I don't really understand the point of that. Where, like, I liked what Alo Yoga did. They promoted their queer influencers, right? They were like kind of shining a light on them. That's going to get them followers. That's going to get them recognition or brand deals. Great. But a tiny little minuscule rainbow flag ain't going to do shit.
What?
So again, it feels good. Like I remember at World Pride in New York in 2019, Chase Bank had these giant float and wonderful. But like 10 years ago, you were denying loans to same-sex couples. So it's like in 10 years, you've made kind of, listen, I believe in progress. I believe anyone can change, but I also don't believe in like such speed. Like in 10 years, you went from not approving loans to now you're like the head of like the pride floats. Like it just feels very, I don't know. It just feels icky, for lack of a better word.
It's like, let's be honest about it. Like, it's fine to be patient and wait and evaluate incremental progress, but like, let's be honest about where we are and where we're not. There's an old joke that, not that old, but about DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusion work in corporate America, and that, you can tell a really great DEI corporate officer by the shortness of their tenure, because anybody who's really doing change is going to get fired really quickly.
That's really funny. I love that. I mean, it's the same in Hollywood. I mean, David Mamet, who's a really famous director, just said DEI initiatives are BS, and you walking around saying, but again, I think sometimes, especially in Hollywood, a lot of these white, straight male executives have so much privilege that they don't really understand that when you take over Max Studio and you take over HBO Max, and then all of a sudden you're getting rid of every queer show, we're aware of that. You're getting rid of Legendary saying it didn't have the numbers, which is BS. You get rid of other queer shows and you're just basically like, oh, whatever, people weren't watching it. That's not true, because if nobody was watching it, the internet response wouldn't be so elevated. So it's like Hollywood is very demoralizing. I mean, as someone who pitches content all the time, I mean, it's very much like, oh, do we really, I mean, we have Rami, like, do we need a Persian? Well, I'm not Egyptian. Rami's not gay. I'm a comedian. He is, but the show's not really about being a comedian. So it's like, it's not the same, but then let's do King of Queens in 16 different iterations, right? So it's like, but that's the thing, like those people, like, and when I say those people, I mean straight white men, they are coming from a place of, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but a lot of it is they're doing half the work and getting twice the pay. And they also show up because they don't feel embarrassed. Like they're like, oh no, I deserve to take up space. And I see it with a lot of, especially when I kind of talk to like POC creators, I'm always like, take up space. Like your idea is good. It's just a matter of like making it. Because before Issa Rae was Issa Rae, or before Rami was Rami, everyone was like, no, it's not interesting. You're not funny. We don't need an Egyptian comedian. We don't need some black girl talking about being awkward. Like we don't need it. But like once you make money, they can't quite shut you down anymore. So I think it's just about putting one foot in front of the other. And especially Hollywood, it's a lot of empty promises. So being able to push past that is, I mean, it's any industry, honestly. Pushing past that is really
my main wish for people in the queer community is to take up space. That's like, if we could just do that, I think that would address so many of the issues that we face. So I was just going nuts when you were talking. I absolutely love it. It's the idea that, like you're saying, some folks are doing half the work and getting twice the pay or twice the credit is absolutely true. And we have to start to learn how to be honest with each other and actually require more from each other. So, for instance, what in the hell is it going to take for a straight person to engage with queer art? Now, obviously, some do, but oh my God,
Sure.
the percentages, the amount of straight art that queer people engage with, the roles are not, give me a break. We need more straight allies out there. And that's why also it's like, let's stop wasting our time trying to convert the unconvertible. Let's activate our allies, get our allies to engage
Absolutely.
with our art and our protests and join us hand in hand. So let's
Absolutely.
require more of our allies. You say you're an ally, let's make you an accomplice. Like, get in the trenches with me and go see a show. I'm going to grab you. I'll buy the tickets for this one, and then the next one you're going to go take me to a piece of queer art, and because
Like,
we're all in this together.
I love that. I like that idea of like, I'm gonna pay for it. There's no excuse. Like, I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna bring you into my
Yeah,
culture. Because how often are gay people bringing us into
right.
their cultures? And I don't know about you, but when I watch a show, I never thought, oh God, two straight people kissing again. This is not what I signed up for. It's like that's what we're used to, right? So, and time again, you see it. Like, I just watched All of Us Strangers, and it was Strangers. All
All
of
of
us. No,
us.
it's
You're
All of
right.
Us Strangers. Like, it was such a beautiful piece, not queer cinema, because everyone said, oh my God, it's the best queer film. No. It was a film about two men in love. That was all it was a film, right? So, and the fact that like 20 years after, what was that movie? Oh my God, when they're in the woods and they're
Brokeback
cowboys.
Mountain.
What was that? Brokeback Mountain. 20 years after Brokeback Mountain, no one in the Academy voted for that movie, right? That movie got no nominations when they got a bunch of BAFTA nominations. It doesn't add up. And a film that was so eloquent, had such twists and turns. I mean, I won't ruin it for anyone, but you don't see a lot of the twists and turns come. And it's just a beautiful piece of cinema. So you see how little progress even the Academy has made. So I think that also it's another litmus test for the rest of society. So a lot of people still are going, "Oh, Bros is a gay movie. That's a gay movie." Stop saying that. It's a movie. It's a comedy, romantic comedy movie. So we need to stop like calling things like, even like, I like when you say queer art, but even that, like, it categorizes it in a certain thing. Because a lot of people, when you say queer art or queer film, they go right to sex. And I think that was the biggest thing, even when I was coming out, which was very frustrating to me, is that I was coming out as a virgin. I'd never had sex. It was not about sex. And everyone kept saying, okay, do you have condoms? Or did you get an STD test? Or when are you going to have sex? Who did you have sex? It was so sex forward. And I felt like that is also very frustrating in the queer community, where people, especially gay people, like straight people, always put us in that box. Like, oh, how many partners do you have? Oh, are you just like a slut? Are you a whore? It's like, even if I am, like, I don't want to talk to you about it.
Yeah,
Like, it doesn't,
I love
you
the way
know?
that you're framing that, because used in that way, those labels can inadvertently, if not intentionally, become disclaimers. It's queer art, meaning rated
Yes.
X or R or whatever, NC, whatever. And
You
it's
just
like,
get a bunch of
better watch
people and
out.
the drag.
Better not take
Yeah.
your
It's like,
kids because it's queer art. So,
I don't like
yeah, it's
that at all.
it's kind of can, even under the best of circumstances, inadvertently become a disclaimer. I want to pivot off of what you just brought up though, and I'm going to give kind of a long wind up. You and I were chatting before our episode, and going to talk about the queer community and how we value ourselves in relationships. The English language is so oriented towards marriage that it's tough to even find an authentic generative word for someone who is genuinely thriving without a partner or a group of partners. I mean, words like
Mhm.
single and solitude don't quite cut it, because it's like, just because you're unmarried doesn't mean you're unpartnered. And just because you're unpartnered doesn't mean you are without loving, romantic, or even platonic relationships. In the US, our
Mhm.
media is so saturated with messages about why we, quote unquote, should be relentlessly seeking potential spouses, mainly because folks know it's a great way to sell us something. And in queer culture, we often get the best of both worlds, because somehow society is both designed to keep us lonely, afraid, and yet also shames us for our solitude. See, there's that word again. It's like we don't even have a word. So, my question, Amir, to you is, how can queer people learn to find happiness, contentment, fulfillment, even during extended periods where we're not partnered? We're just living our lives and maybe having all sorts of sex or maybe not having sex? Or how can we learn to stand tall and take up that space?
I mean, that is a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, I'm still kind of struggling. I mean, I'm invited to weddings and it's always like, are you going to bring a +1? And is that like, am I not enough? There's an episode of Sex and the City where she talks about like, if you're not getting married and you're not having a child and you're not buying a home and you're not meeting these milestones, then you don't get celebrated. And I remember she says, well, like the only time is really your birthday or graduation. If you're a single person, that's the only times you're really going to get celebrated by anyone. And it was funny because I guess it was like Carrie was telling Charlotte, and then Charlotte was like, well, everyone gets a birthday. Yeah, exactly. So it's just basically it's graduation. So if you don't do education, then like you're really never going to be celebrated unless you get married. So, and especially in like Persian culture, like I have friends who are like Indian, it's like, if there's such a premium, like even when I was in India, like every corner was a wedding banquet. There is this idea that if you don't get married, like not only are you not going to have a good life here, you're not going to have salvation. Like you're going to be reincarnated as like a donkey. So it's even like, it's not even your life's going to be bad here. Like you're going to be a beetle later and nobody's going to care about you. So I think that process is like, that's a lot of pressure. Like, you don't want to be reincarnated as a beetle. So I think for me, it's like, sometimes I'm like, I'm totally fine and I'm capable and independent and I'm fine. But like that, I was like doing an eye exam and the eye exam was asking if I'm single or married. I'm like, does that matter? Like, are my eyes going to dilate differently? Like, what the fuck? I was like sitting there and I asked them and they're like, yeah, it's just our form. We'll change it. Like, I was annoyed. I like said, prefer not to answer. Not because I don't know that I'm single or I'm embarrassed about it. It's just, I was like, I don't want to talk about that when I'm fucking getting an eye exam. Like, so I think that it just, it comes up so often. And I think a lot of women talk about how annoying it is. But, as a gay man, it's like, sometimes it is annoying when I feel like my friends are getting married and I'm 37, they're having kids, they're buying homes. They're in such a like, what is the word? Like planting such deep roots. And I'm not really. Like, I'm trying to go to Turkey next month. I'm trying to like not have roots. Like, and I thought that was so bad that I didn't want those things. But I'm also realizing like I get to have a life that a lot of people don't get to have. And I'm seeing the beauty in that instead of seeing the like, oh my God, I don't have any assets. I don't have a home. I have no like backups. Like, okay, whatever. Like a lot of people have backups and they want more freedom. So I try to look at it from that perspective. But again, it's not a very easy answer and you have to figure it out. And I think the first step is to really be okay with solitude. And I don't mean like being lonely, because I think there's a difference between being lonely and being alone. I remember the first time I went to dinner alone, I was like, oh my God, like, and of course, like a group of friends sit next to you, someone's celebrating a birthday. And when you sit down, they're like, for one, I'm like, why don't you just take the fucking place sitting? Like, why do you need to do that? And it's like, I don't know, restaurants, if they want to shame you, I don't know if it's inadvertent, but they're like, oh, for one, I'm like, yeah, is there a ghost? Like, it's me. So it's very frustrating. So I think the first step is to really not only eat alone, but to travel alone and to really realize, like, even if you are with I've been in relationships where they're like right next to me in bed and they feel like a mile away. That's much worse. I would rather be alone without some like ding dong that I don't have a connection with. So I don't know. I guess for me, like, but again, I'm human. So I have moments where I'm like, well, I'm so single. Like,
Well, I mean, first of all, that eye exam form needs to chill the fuck out. I mean,
fuck that eye exam form. I'm telling you, I was like, oh, this is the last thing I need to do.
My favorite thing to do, because I'm kind of a brat, my favorite thing to do is fill out this form but lie everywhere. And so, like think of the most risque lie through the lens of straight society, so, I have 10 husbands or, whatever they.
Yes, I'm in a couple, like they're like going to get so.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny, like and it's funny because when I went to, there's a doctor in LA that like when I lived in LA, it was like the entire office was gay. The doctors, the nurses, everyone. Nobody ever asked me if I was single. Nobody ever cared. So what they cared about was what hurts, why are you here? Like a fucking doctor should. Like, what's going on with you? Like, and again, it's like maybe because gay guys just don't care. Like never heard my gay friends say, any of my friends say, like, are you single? They don't care. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, maybe it's just not something we care about. And maybe I don't have a lot. I mean, my friends are starting to get married, my gay friends, and I'm going to a gay wedding in September. So maybe they'll change their perspective, but I don't know. I just feel like we don't put such a premium, because even if you are married, you might be open. You might have a non-traditional marriage. Like, so I don't know. I feel like gay people are really kind of, again, setting the culture, like what we were talking about. Straight culture is a lot of times influenced by our culture. So what they do and the way they dress and the things that they do, even painting their nails, TikTok boys didn't figure, they didn't come up with it, right? Gay men have been painting their nails for hundreds of years. And like in Egypt time, some queen in like Babylonia was painting her nails. Like, you didn't invent it. Like, so let's pretend that's what you did. So I think it kind of goes to say, even for our ideas around being single, our ideas around openness, our ideas around whatever, like straight people are now pegging, like a lot of that stuff is because I think we make things, we push past the norm and we make it okay. And then we get like pummeled for it. And then when straight people do it, at that point, it's kind of like it's been destigmatized. So like even when the TikTok boys started painting their nails, like people would give them shit, but it was already at that point somewhat destigmatized, right? So I think that says a lot. But even now, like the nails are such a thing for people. It's like, I'm like, you're still, like I still get messages like, I hate the nails. Okay. I don't really care.
Well, it's just so interesting. I'm always curious about the self-talk for people, especially online. Like, what is happening in that moment that you, or what are you expecting to happen? Like, Amir is going like, oh crap, you're right. I guess I shouldn't be painting my nails.
I mean, I don't like, and I think sarcasm again is lost on the keyboard warriors. They're not really the smartest of the bunch. So I do sometimes play with them because my therapist said it's a good outlet for me. So I'm taking that to yeah, I'll take any opportunity to do that. So I was like, there was one, I think during Ramadan, who was like, you're going to hell and you're not a good Muslim. And, you know, God hates gay people. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to stop being gay. And then they wrote like, oh my God, I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy. And I was like, girl, you sarcasm. The sarcasm was lost on you. I sucked enough dicks where there's no takesy backsies on this.
Well, so. And it's also you know, what do these folks want from us? Do they want us to marry their daughters?
Sometimes. I had this guy that was messaging me every day saying, I have a daughter for you. I have a daughter for you. And I was like, honey, like I'm probably cuter than your daughter. Like I probably dress better than your daughter, honey. She can't handle all of this.
Well, like you're saying, you know, one of the wonderful benefits of coming out is you gain this liberation from all the life scripts that are, you know, constrain the lives of so many straight people. They're on this like path of milestones they have to achieve by certain ages, and you know, we get the freedom from that, the freedom to paint with more colors. But like you also said, we're human and we're on this relentless assault, the saturation of messages that say we're not worthy unless we're in a relationship, and oh, but if you're queer, you're not worthy of a relationship either, so you're just fundamentally unworthy. It's a catch-22. And so it's really easy, especially in our more tender moments, to internalize those messages and kind of cling to them, messages of our unworthiness, because we're just around them all day long. You know, people trying to sell us stuff. Again, I keep coming back to it. People trying to sell us stuff all day long by trying to make us feel lonely, miserable, and afraid. And part of resisting that is lying on the forums. Part of resisting that is screwing around with people online when it's fun, when it's an outlet.
I never put anyone down. I never, you know, well, I should never say that. I mean, I have been aggressive with people. So I don't want to like, look what he did. Yeah. But, you know, I think if anyone threatens like physical violence, like I will come at them really hard. And a lot of times I'm also at defense of other people. Like any kind of transphobic comment, I will come at it. And if you are continuing with that narrative, you will be blocked, you will be removed. Like I'm very quick to like block and remove. But because it's my safe space that I've created. And I know that a lot of, people say there's no safe spaces anymore. I understand that, but I've curated as best as I could a safe space online. And so if you're going to bring your negativity into it, I'm just going to have you removed. But what I've realized is if you are happy with who you are, whoever you date, whatever their gender, whatever their sexuality, it will just be additive. And I think for a long time, my life was very complete me, kind of pick me energy. And that never really works because you attract someone who's kind of half as well. And it ends up being two halves and that never makes a whole. There's a joke somewhere in this. So I'm like, I just don't have the energy to find the joke, but there is a joke here. But anyways, I think it's like you have to kind of move as if you're in a couple. And I don't mean like, don't be like crazy and be like, I need a table for two and it's just you. I mean, energetically move like a couple, right? Like taking up space for two people. Like when I travel, like I move like a couple, right? If I want to do something, I'm gonna do it. Because a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. Like you went to this restaurant alone. I'm like, well, I wanted to go to this restaurant. I was alone traveling. What am I going to do? Not eat? Like I'm going to do room service the whole time? Or if I see a movie, like my friends are like, oh my God, you should have told us we'd come with you. I'm like, I didn't want you to come because I like going to movies alone. I don't want you there. Like, I don't want you there. And number one thing for me with movies is that I like to zone out in the back. I also like to just like, I know people are going to hate me for this, but I sit all the way in the back and I like to be on my phone. I like to I don't make calls, but I like to text during the movie. I like to eat my popcorn. I like to just be alone. And then I also like to leave. If I see a movie and an hour and a half in, it's not getting my attention, I just walk out. So I can't do that if someone else is there. So, I have to sit there the whole movie and I'm like, oh my God, we're sitting all the way through Magic Mike. This movie is awful. So like, that's the thing. Like, I don't want that pressure. So again, like being a couple, I think a lot of people in their mind is like, it's going to solve all my problems. I have a friend who's like, I'm going to move to Paris and all my problems are going to be solved. No, they're just going to follow you and you're just going to be eating better food. That's it. That's the only difference. So being in a couple, like, yeah, you'll get regular sex, maybe not, but that's about it. Like everything else is going to be the same. You're still going to have your struggles. You're just going to have another person. That's it. Like, I don't know why there's such a premium put on it. And of course, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's a financial thing. They can sell insurance to a married couple. They can sell like this and that and health insurance and the fear and then you need this and you need that and life insurance. So it all starts to like feel like a capitalistic snowball. So it kind of makes sense because I think they realize like, oh my God, the gays can get married. Like a bunch of executives are, oh my God, the gays can get married. Now we can start to take money from them. And a lot of them are less likely to have children. So they have more of a disposable income. They're going to spend more. They're also more likely to like spend on frivolous things, quote unquote. So let's just sell it to them because who cares if we think they're going to hell? Let's make money off, right?
I love this so much. I never thought of it like that. I love the way you describe unapologetically living like a couple, just as a metaphor so people can understand that it's like you're just taking up space. You're going to be unapologetic. You're going to do what you want. You're not going to ask for permission because you're single to go outside. Like, I'm single. Am I allowed to go here? Is this restaurant open to see?
Yes. Like, my friend's like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. You just went and you didn't. I'm like I went to a comedy show alone on Wednesday and I made friends. And it was funny. When I got there, I was like, I 100% bet you. The guy in front's because my friend was performing, they're 100% gonna say it's just you. 100% did that. Then when we were walking, was like, oh, and then everywhere I tried to sit, they were like, it's taken. And there was a moment where I was like, oh my God, should I leave? And then I was like, so I went back to the guy and I was like, I'm alone. Help me find a seat. And lo and behold, he got me a seat. And I sat with this like lovely group of Persian girls. We totally hit it off. Like we were laughing. We were having a great time. And even if we didn't have that, it's okay. Be uncomfortable. Like, I don't know why. And I don't mean this to be like elitist, but I'm American. I was born here, but I feel like a lot of Americans get really sheltered and they're like, they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to be put in a situation where they're not fully comfortable, but you're never going to grow. Like, I get it. It's awkward to go on a hot air balloon with 3 other couples. I did it. I wanted to do it. I'm not going to ever do that. Like, I might never be married. And I was telling my friend, and like straight people hate when you say stuff like this. I was like, I'm not being self-deprecating. I might never get married. I might never like have a child, and that's fine. She's like, don't say that. Oh my God, how dare you? I'm like, this is my truth. Like, it might not happen for me, but I have very, like you said, I have love in my life. I have really great friends. I have a great family. I have lovers. Like, I don't need to be married. Like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Oh my God.
No,
Yeah.
it can't receive that. First of all, I mean, I'm gonna look stunning in a wedding dress. I mean, let's be honest. But that's not the point. It's like, if I do it, it's gonna be for me, and it's not gonna be for everyone else.
Let me tell you a quick story from my life, because I am married. I was with we live in Seattle. I was with my husband before marriage was legal in the US, and we were registered domestic partners at the time. And the state of Washington, which is liberal in terms of, because of the folks in Seattle, politically liberal, saw fit to send us a threatening letter that said, oh, I know. Send us a threatening letter in the mail that said, we see that you're registered domestic partners. You have 30 days to get married, because this is right when marriage became legal, or your partnership is dissolved.
My God.
It's like when progressives attack. It's just like, to your point, is like, we had never had this conversation. I had no emotional attunement to marriage because I grew up thinking it was beyond my wildest dreams. And so, and he's even older than me and had the same sort of a situation. And so we looked at each other like, do we want to get married? I don't know. Like, are we supposed to get married now? Do we have to get are we in trouble? Are we gonna like but it's just the relentless pressure. It's just everywhere. It's like society's oriented. Like, are you married yet? Are you sure you want to be married? Are you getting married? When do you want to get married? And then, when we talk about the queer rights movement, we like inadvertently co-opted this with respectability politics. We were fighting so hard to be seen as equals to straight people that we latched on to the idea that if only we could get married, if only that were legalized, then maybe they would love us. Yes, obviously there's all sorts of financial benefits to marriage, all that kind of stuff. It should be open to everybody. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that when we fought this hard, when we attached all of our hopes and dreams on this one issue and we achieved it, we had all these slogans like love equals love, that we're almost like implicitly saying we're just the same as straight people, except, one unintended consequence of this strategy is that it shifted our resources away from equal rights for trans people, around queer people of color getting healthcare. And it's like, it's shifted them away, wait for it, in favor of anything we thought straight white cis people might deem more palatable. So that strategy of respectability politics, which was hugely successful, in part because it comforts and consoles straight white cis people that love equals love. We're just like you. So it's like they're able to dip their toe into diversity, equity, and inclusion without actually risking too much inconvenience or wealth, without sharing too much power. So, Amir, my question to you is, how can we start to convince the community that love doesn't always equal love, that the love is not always all the same, not all of us want to be the same, that trans people's lives are equally valid, that queer people of color are equally valid, and that their liberation, our liberation, all of us in this together, is equally urgent?
I mean, it's a very loaded question, and there's a lot into that, obviously, as I'm sure everyone knows. But I think what's interesting is what you said about like this like fast track to marriage. You have 30 days, right? A lot of people don't understand the way laws and props and all these things work. So when marriage gets approved, they don't understand that on the sneaky, it's going to dissolve all these people's partnerships, right? So there's a lot that goes into laws, right? No means yes, and yes means no, and people go to the voting booth and they make all the wrong mistakes, right? So there's a lot that goes into like voting, and people are going to crucify me, but I feel very disconnected from the voting process. I mean, I was very, very political and very involved, but I feel like, especially this year, I've been very like disenfranchised and very just like super disillusioned by just everything, because I feel like people are just saying what we want to hear. And it's a lot of like the same topics coming up, like immigration or like all this stuff that like only like, birth control rights and reproductive rights, everything just comes up every 4 years, and it's like nothing ever changes. So I just feel very disillusioned by it. And I think a lot of younger people do as well. And I see people on TikTok and a lot of the Gen Z, and, they're very much into protesting. And I think a lot of like millennials, even, and boomers, I feel like millennials, especially the older millennials, they get very like, oh my God, protesting is kind of inconvenient. And it's like, do you realize America was built on protest? Like, we literally protested England's treatment
Oh
of
my
us.
God.
And that's how our country came to be. Like, I'm sorry that you were late to your flight from Omaha. Like, nobody. So that's annoying. So I think that's like the number one shift I've seen, that a lot of people are like, seem kind of annoyed by the political process, or, you know, and you said something that I really liked and really resonated with me, is that stop trying to convince people who are so far right. Like, I'm not going to try to convince Marjorie Taylor Greene that trans people exist. I'm not talking to JK Rowling. I don't care. Like, you're a trash bag and let's take the trash out. Like, I don't need to sit there and try to convince you. I'm trying to convince people that are riding a fence or in the middle. So that's where you're gonna, because the people that are already in your camp, like whatever, but there's a lot of queer people who are really on the fence, or who are kind of lean conservative, and people don't talk about that. There's a lot of like, nothing wrong. I mean, something wrong, but I try not to. Something wrong with voting for Trump now, but if you're still standing on it, like you're standing for, aside from all of his policies and everything he's done, January 6th, and just his like, he's just a rude human being who's an embarrassment to America. So if you're still standing for him and you're queer, there's something wrong with you. Like, you need to like do a little internal work. I'm trying as hard to not sound judgmental, but maybe I'm judgmental. You need to do some internal work, because if someone hates everyone and you're still standing for them, maybe it's not your queerness, maybe you're standing on your whiteness. So just do a little internal work. Like, I've done it. I mean, I can pass for white, and that brings me a lot of privileges. So I am aware of that. And I think being aware of your privilege and being able to check it are two different things. So, you know, a lot of straight white men can change the channel, right? They don't need to watch Middle Eastern people in trauma. They don't need to watch gay people in trauma. They can just change the channel. So how do we get them to stay on the channel? By continuing to just really just survive and to live and to have queer joy, and to not push agendas down throats, because it just doesn't work. Like, we saw it with the promotion of the Bros movie. It didn't work. Promoting that movie as, if you don't go see this, you're a homophobe, made people change the channel. So it didn't work. So we have to find a different way. I think for me, it's really important. Like, when I pitch a story, I say, this is a story of someone who's struggling in their 30s, trying to figure out who they are in LA. It has nothing to do with being gay. That just happens to be that they're gay. And I think that's the way you can tell a story, because a lot of shows don't center the straightness because it's quote unquote normal. Why would you say this is a straight guy? He has a family, he has a kid, he has a wife, he's like annoyed with her, she has a she shed. It's like the standard like pitch, because it works. But when it comes to our stories, we have to keep saying they're gay, they're gay, they're gay, they're gay. It's like, you don't need, and I'm not saying don't be proud of who you are, but this is an opportunity to pivot and to get what you want. So when I pitch the story, it's a story of someone in their 30s who's fucked up trying to figure it out. It is not a gay movie. It is not a gay show. It is not a gay series. It is just, that's just something that's just their sexuality.
I think for a lot of us, after a while, labels have diminishing returns. Like, at first, when we come out, it's so thrilling to claim our identities. When we come out on any issue, not just sexual orientation, so many of us are closeted about a wide array of issues. Sexual orientation is just kind of the first thing that comes to people's mind when you use that phrase. But when we first come out and embrace a label, it's thrilling, it's exciting, it's clarifying. You want to shout it from the rooftops, and all that's wonderful and beautiful and valid. But what I've experienced over time is it's just like, it becomes less interesting. Like you're describing, it's like, and inadvertently, like we were saying earlier, kind of can become a disclaimer or a way for, in the world you're describing, for a media company to check a box without truly investing in the talent and cultivating the audience. It's like, no, we have our token gay show. And invariably that then becomes about white gay men. white gay cis men, frankly, because we can't help but lead with our whiteness and our maleness and our cisness because society imposes that upon everybody else. It's the first thing people encounter. And I can say that because I'm a white gay man and I experience it every day. People encounter me as white and male and cis before they encounter me as gay. And oftentimes that conflict is not pretty. That when they start to register that it's gay, that cognitive dissonance kicks in into some bad ways. But I have all of that range of privilege that I get to experience, not getting fired, getting unwarranted raises and promotions, having an easier time getting jobs, feeling free and easy to take over a meeting, dominate a room just because of my stature, my size, my color of skin tone and color of my, whatever. All of that kicks in before the queer stuff, which is almost like a lagging indicator. But when we are in relationships with one another, what I have found in my own life is we have a larger appetite for complexity. And, so it's like understanding the nuances of the issues and seeing where people are coming from. And so what I almost think, the answer is, and it's really unsatisfying because it's going to take a long, long time, is that this stuff is going to change one friendship at a time.
From a micro level, what we're saying, right? Because I think a lot of people think and even when it comes to like, okay, I want to change the landscape. Start one follower at a time. Start one friend at a time, right? There's certain things that people understand that I'm not going to put up with. I'm not going to put up with transphobic comments. I'm not going to and I will remove you as a friend. And I'm very clear, and it might come off judgmental, but with all due respect, I don't really give a fuck. Because there's certain things that I don't want those kind of people in my life. And again, I'm not talking about acquaintances. Acquaintances can have whatever opinions they want to have. I'm talking about a good friend that you have interactions with that are on the regular. So I think it's about, again, the beauty of being a queer person is that you get to design your life and you can design it the way you want. And again, we don't choose our families, and sometimes our family relationships are very contentious. They might not accept who you are. They might kick you out, whatever. So the friends you make kind of become your family, and you need to cultivate a friend group that kind of resonates, where you're at in your own life. But I think what's interesting is that, like you said, even in the gay community, like what you said about cis, white man in a room takes up space. Even in the gay community, like that's seen as a premium, right? Like if I was masculine and I was like, because I'm white passing, if I was a masculine gay man, like I would definitely get way more attention online. I would definitely have more followers. I would definitely have more brand deals. So there's a lot of like still misogyny in the gay community. There's a lot of hatred against feminine men. There's a lot of no femmes, no fats, no blacks. You have all of these tropes. And I get like a lot of people think, oh, things are better, whatever. But they're not. Like if you look at a dating app, there's still people who act like that. There's still people who operate that way. And again, these dating apps, these social media is a litmus test for what the society at large is at, which is kind of scary. Like, I'm not going to lie, when I see a buff, white, masculine gay man, I'm like, and I've done a lot of work around this, I'm even like, oh, wow, that's really amazing. Like, what would it be like to be like that? What would it be like to have that much privilege? I even wanted to do a test where I use like this like masculine white gay guy that I know's like photos online just to see like, would I get a lot more messages? Not that I would actually like catfish anyone, but just to see like, there is such a discrepancy, because when you go to other countries, like I get so many more messages, or like I have friends who are Asian. If they go to another country, they get so much more attention. Like, so there's a lot of censoring a certain group. And I wonder why that is, right? And it kind of goes back to what you were saying. Who's more comfortable with like a fabulous gay man with nails who shows up like me and is like very feminine, or do they want someone who kind of looks like them? Oh my God, I didn't even know you're gay. Yeah. They love that. Like I remember with my ex, people would be like, I didn't even know he's gay. Oh my God. It almost felt like, it feels like a badge of honor, right? You're not coming off feminine. You're not a sissy. You're not gay, but it's like, that person's gay. Like, so why are we giving that a premium? It's like, oh, if you didn't open your mouth, like I remember this one time, this person was like, if you didn't open your mouth, I wouldn't know you're gay. It's like, that's not a, what? Am I supposed to see that as a compliment? Is that a compliment?
So much of it is like an extension of misogyny. It gets back to the gender roles that we were describing. It's like the measure of somebody's gayness, gayosity, gayitude, there's no word, I guess, is like masculinity. and femininity. I mean, like, what? Like you're saying, none of this has anything to do with one another. Your performance of gender has nothing to do with your performance or your adherence to gay culture or queer culture or what. So, but it's weird, these assumptions that we make, and it's titillating, it's surprising. It's, to find out somebody's gay and we didn't know. We swim in this soup
Right.
together. We're all saturated with the same messages. So of course we all internalize that, whether you're gay or straight or whatever your orientation. And so it's like we all are susceptible. Every day when I take stock of the day, every day I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that. Or, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. That was so stupid. Where did that come from? Get off of me. Where did that come from? Some racist, sexist, like crappy thing they're like barnacles. And, we're swimming in the sea and we get these barnacles, and it's part of our job to constantly take stock and excise them, frankly.
And these are implicit biases. There are racist tendencies of moving to the other side if a black man is walking. I mean, people have these tendencies. These are people that have done the work and they still fall in these pitfalls. So you have to like really actively do the work, because I don't think you just wake up and you're not racist and you're not sexist and you're not homophobic, because even gay men have a lot of internalized homophobia. When you're telling another gay man they're too feminine for you, that's internalized homophobia. You need to check that shit. Nobody cares if you want a laundry list of what it takes to date you. You have issues. You need to work on those. And I remember I got into it with someone online. He said, I don't want to know if you're not into black men. He's like, you're not even black. That's not the point. I don't want to know that you are no black. I don't need to see that. That's weird. And when I'm on Grindr, I don't want to see that. So you're going to delete, I'm going to block you, but I just want you to know it's weird what you're doing.
And it's harmful to the community because we're all in community together. And so you trying to normalize those racist or whatever the bigoted message is, you're making it easier for people to cling to those dark beliefs that are always kind of reaching for us. Living in the U.S. society today is an act of, if you're living honorably, it's an act of, like I was saying, constantly taking stock and excising those messages from your life. And it's work. It takes work. And so when you then go out and you weaponize those implicit biases, or you try and normalize those tropes or cliches, you're making it that much harder for queer people of color or whomever the group is that's being othered to just exist and live their lives.
Absolutely. Not only like exist and live their lives, but to be able to just use the restroom or to thrive, or like you like polarize. It's like the person wants to shit. They don't care about, like, they're just trying. So it's like, it's interesting, but these things work. Or the drag shows, right? Like you polarize it and you make drag story time, and 9 out of 10 people who molest children are straight men. So do the math, like nobody cares. And I'm not going to sit here, but again, these things started early on. In the 1950s, they'd show videos of gay men predatory running behind schools, trying to grab children. There's a lot of stuff that like is still in the zeitgeist and in people's minds. And you have to, like you said, like a barnacle, excise that out. And even me, there are times where I'm like, why am I triggered by that? Or why am I finding that person to be very annoying? And I'm like, okay, are they more feminine than me? And I'm finding triggers and not loving my own femininity. Or, I mean, we had in the 90s, they had create a whole category called metrosexual. God forbid anyone said you were gay. God forbid anybody, you know what I mean? And it's like a lot of those men, a lot of straight men, actually Middle Eastern men especially, are very flamboyant, are very feminine. But the minute you're gay, it's like, don't touch me. I remember like growing up, like my uncles would like shower naked in the lake, and there's a lot of homoerotic behavior. But if you were gay, don't touch me, get away from me, you're disgusting, right? So a lot of these very macho communities, they, Italians, they kiss twice on the cheek. I mean, the mobsters are kissing each other on the cheek, but then if you're gay, like you get murdered on Sopranos. Like, so it's like, there's a lot of like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like a lot of contradictions in a lot of these communities, right? Especially when there's a lot of machismo and chauvinism and toxic masculinity, but there's also a lot of homoerotic behavior. I mean, even in football, they're slapping each other's ass. They're, I remember like in my high school, the football team like was teabagging each other, and they were all straight. But these are activities where it's like we're slapping each other in the face with our dicks, and it's just like, but these homoerotic behaviors, like it happens in a lot of sports, a lot of like groups of men, but especially in the US, it's very like you have two boxes, you're gay or you're straight. But when you go to Europe, like there's a lot more fluidity in the way they present. That's why the joke is always like, are they gay or European? Because they're very like, if they want to wear a purple shirt, they're going to wear a purple shirt. But Americans, like, they are like second guessing now. You know, they're very much second guessing. Like Lionel Messi, like he's the most famous soccer player. He has a hot pink jersey. The sales in the US are like very low. In the UK, they're sold out all the time.
It's so sad.
Because nobody cares. They're like, I like the jersey.
It's just,
I don't care that
it's just so sad. The snowflake, the fragility, when you think about how constrained how small their lives are, those people who are allowing themselves to be dictated by these beliefs and these fears and self-loathing. You know, when you think about these labels, the human heart runs so broad and deep, it doesn't fit into these. I mean, nature is so messy, it doesn't fit into these neat categories. So what if I identify straight and I fantasize sometimes about having same-sex relations, or I've had romantic partners but identify straight, or if I identify as bi, does that mean I'm 50-50 or 60-40 or 90-10? Like, we don't have words in the English language for every combination and permutation of desire. And so that's why, again, over time, like you were saying previously, the labels kind of have diminishing returns as you see the complexity of nature and people's existence. And I feel like it's all, you know, maybe I'm jaded because I'm just so, like, social media and the internet's been so challenging. I just feel like I'm hopeful that it's going to come back to relationships and community. Like you're saying, that's in the micro. The macro, obviously, policies and structural things have to be changed, and you're going to get a lot of leverage out of that. But when it comes to relating with people, instead of bantering is one thing, that's just fun, but arguing with trolls online when you're emotionally invested, especially if you're fragile and tender, is just a recipe for disaster instead of investing in the complexity of your real relationships and community. So when somebody comes after me, I'm like, are we in community together? And if the answer is no, and then I'm like, is this fun for me to dunk on you? And if the answer is no, then it's like delete, block, mute, whatever, you know. And I do that proudly, and I encourage everybody to do that, just as a matter of sanity.
Sometimes you have to do it, and you have to sometimes block the noise, and you have to understand that a lot of the internet is clickbait, right? Like, there was that interview with Billie Eilish where, you know, instead of like just saying, like, I'm sure she said so many other important things in this interview, but what they picked out was, I want a vagina in my face. So that's the only thing we're seeing in all these clickbait. So it again, it sexualizes queer people. It makes it all about sex. It makes it all about, and it's like, it's not like gay people are having more sex. They're just they're less puritanical about it, and they're more open about it. And Americans are, honestly, for a culture that's so sex forward, they're very not sex positive. Their shows are very sex forward, and they have like, but it's still very like, oh my God, like, you know, like even when, like in Saltburn, when he's dancing, I'm like, okay, he's naked dancing, but that was so shocking. Right. Is it a prosthetic? Is it not? You know, and I remember they asked, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of his, it was the guy that was, I forgot his name, but he's the one from All of Us Strangers. And they asked him on the red carpet, like, you're friends with Barry, did he use a prosthetic? You would never ask that from a straight guy. You're asking the gay guy, and he really handled it really well. He was like, I don't know, and I don't care. Like, that's not interesting to me. It's like my friend's penis, and he's acting, and it's like a job. And so I think it's like that kind of, let me clutch my pearls. Like, it's just, I think to me, it's a lot of a take. I think Americans are having as much sex as anyone else. They're just like very puritanical about it. And they're very like, oh my God, I'm so shocked by it. It's like, you're not that shocked by it. Like, so I think that that's like the number one thing. And it's like about just letting that go, and just, if you want to have sex, have sex. You want to talk about it, talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, that's also fine. And also, I think for me, what I want people to realize is that queer people do not equal sex. Like, there is asexual queer people. There's queer people who don't have sex. Like, your identity has nothing to do with sex. Sex is male, female, however you identify, intersex, trans. That's sex. The rest of it is like your choice. It's your like perspective. It's your, how you see your body, how you want to use your body. Like, never use it. You're not going to lose it. That's like BS. That's like, you know, they'll still be there.
Oh, Amir, I could talk to you all day. This hour has just flown by. I'm so grateful that you decided to come back and join me again. It's just been so fun to catch up and hear how you're doing and learn more from you. We're going to put all of Amir's socials in the show notes, so you don't have to jot them down in a hurry. Be sure to check Amir out. Hysterical, funny, educational. Amir's website is amiryass.com. Of course, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Amir. It's wonderful to see you.
It was wonderful to see you, and I can't believe we ended on you won't lose it if you don't use it.
Somehow that seems appropriate.
Funny.
Somehow it seems appropriate. Okay, everyone.
So funny. Everyone pray for us in 2024 in America that we get a president that's not unhinged. So
Amen to that one. Okay, everyone, you have made it through another hour of Not Going Quietly. I'm so proud of you. We could not do this show without you. We love you so much, and I'm so grateful for all of your notes and all of your comments and likes. Please come to our social media pages and engage with us. We absolutely adore it. Until next time, thank you so much. This is Britt East signing off. Bye-bye. You've been listening to Not Going Quietly with your host, Britt East. Thanks so much for joining us on this wild ride as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy. Check out our show notes for links, additional information, and episodes located on your favorite podcast platform.